On Christmas Eve in a city of millions, the most powerful Alpha CEO sat alone on a frozen park bench. No pack, no mate, nothing but haunted memories and violet eyes that glowed with supernatural grief. And in the middle of that freezing night, a tiny Omega pup walked up to him, looked straight into his broken soul, and whispered words that shattered every wall he'd built. "Don't cry, Alpha. You can borrow my mommy tonight." What happened next? He never expected it. Before this story claims your heart, remember one thing. Sometimes the fiercest protector comes wrapped in the smallest act of kindness. If you believe in fated mates, hit the subscribe button and let's begin. Connor Logan, 35. Alpha King of the corporate world. A man who commanded boardrooms, crushed competitors, and carried a fortune most couldn't fathom. But on this Christmas Eve, he was just another broken soul outside a city park, nursing the coldest night of his immortal life. For the third year in a row, he sat on this bench alone. Every Christmas used to be different. His pack, his family, warm, chaotic, full of laughter and the scent of pine and cinnamon. But when tragedy ripped them away, Christmas became a graveyard of memories. Connor had tried to bury himself in mergers, acquisitions, numbers that never lied. But grief doesn't disappear. It prowls beneath the surface, waiting for a night like this when the mask finally cracks. Snow fell in heavy silence. The park lights cast long shadows across the frozen ground. He sat there staring at his hands that once held everything, now trembling with nothing. He whispered into the winter dark, his breath fogging the air. "I wasn't strong enough to save you." For once, the ruthless Alpha CEO wasn't ruthless at all. A single tear escaped, freezing on his cheek before he could wipe it away. That's when he heard tiny footsteps crunching through the snow. "Excuse me, mister." The voice was small, gentle. A little girl stood beside him, bundled in a red coat 3 sizes too big. Her cheeks were flushed pink from the cold, but her eyes, golden, unmistakably Omega, held a warmth Connor hadn't felt in years. "You're crying," she whispered, tilting her head. Connor quickly turned away, his alpha instincts screaming to hide weakness. "I'm fine." "No, you're not," she said with the confidence only a child possesses. "Only people who feel really, really alone say that." He froze. This pup, this child, could see through the armor the entire business world couldn't crack. "What's your name?" Connor asked, his voice rougher than intended. "Leah," she announced proudly. "And you're Mr. Lonely." Connor choked on a bitter laugh. "That's not my name. But that's what you are." Her golden eyes didn't waver. "Your wolf is sad. I can feel it." His breath caught. How could she possibly know? Humans shouldn't sense these things. But Omega pups, even young ones, had gifts. Empathy that cut through lies like silver through shadow. Then Leah did something that shattered him completely. She reached out and took his hand. Her tiny fingers, warm despite the cold, wrapped around his trembling ones as if she'd done it 1,000 times before. "You need a hug," she said, utterly serious. Connor was too stunned to move. But then she stepped forward and hugged him. A small, fierce, impossibly gentle embrace that cracked something deep in his chest. He closed his eyes. His wolf, silent for so long, stirred with a painful whimper. For the first time in 3 years, Connor felt something other than emptiness. Just for a heartbeat. Just enough to hurt. After a long moment, Leah stepped back and studied him with those wise, ancient eyes children sometimes carry. "You know," she whispered softly, "no one should be alone on Christmas Eve." Connor's throat tightened. "I don't have anyone anymore." Leah's face lit up with sudden inspiration. "That's okay." She pointed behind her toward the park entrance. "My mommy's working late tonight. She's really tired, but..." Leah leaned in like she was sharing a secret. "You can borrow her." Connor blinked. "What?" Leah nodded as if it was the most obvious solution in the world. "She gives the best hugs. She makes everyone feel better. She could help you too." His voice cracked despite himself. "Why would you offer me that?" Leah shrugged, her red coat bunching around her shoulders. Because you look like you need a mommy tonight. She said it so simply, so pure. And my mommy says we should always help the sad people. Especially the wolves. Connor felt his alpha control slip. This child, this tiny omega pup, radiated more compassion than anyone in his ruthless empire. She saw his wolf. She wasn't afraid. "Where is your mother?" he managed to ask. Leah pointed toward the street corner. "She's cleaning offices. 3 jobs tonight. But when she's done..." Her smile was hopeful, heartbreaking. "We can all spend Christmas together. You, me, and Mommy." Something ignited in Connor's chest. Something he thought had died with his pack. Oh. Before he could respond, Leah's phone, a cheap, cracked thing, buzzed in her pocket. Her face went pale as she answered. "Leah." A frantic voice crackled through. "Sweetie, it's Mrs. Chen from the building. Your mama." She collapsed. "The ambulance is coming." Connor was on his feet instantly. His violet eyes flared with alpha power, and his voice came out in a command that made even the snow seem to pause. "Where is she?" Connor didn't move from the bench at first. He told himself he was waiting for the cold to numb him completely, but the truth was darker than that. He was waiting to feel nothing at all. The park stretched empty around him, a wasteland of white beneath the glow of old street lamps. Families had retreated hours ago to warm homes and wrapped presents. The city hummed in the distance, alive with celebration he could no longer touch. His violet eyes tracked the falling snow, each flake a small, silent death. 3 years. 3 Christmas Eves since the fire. Since his pack was torn from him in a single night of screaming and ash and the kind of pain that rewrites your DNA. He'd stopped trying to rebuild. Stopped answering calls from concerned alphas who wanted to check in. Stopped pretending the Forbes features and billion-dollar deals meant anything when he went home to silence. Connor Logan, they called him. The Ice King. The alpha who felt nothing. If only that were true. His hands trembled as he whispered into the dark. I wasn't strong enough. The words fogged in the frozen air. An accusation he repeated every year like penance. I should have saved you. His wolf stirred beneath his skin, restless and grieving. It wanted to run, to hunt, to do anything but sit here drowning in memories. But Connor held it down with iron control. He deserved this pain. He'd failed his family. He didn't get to escape it. That's when he heard the footsteps. Determined. Crunching through snow that should have warned any sensible child to stay away from strange men on dark benches. Connor didn't look up. "Go home, kid. It's late." You're crying. The voice was gentle, curious, completely unafraid. Connor's alpha instincts flared. Danger, vulnerability, protect, but he forced them down. He swiped at his face roughly, erasing evidence. "I'm fine." No, you're not. Now he looked. A little girl stood 3 feet away, bundled in a red coat that swallowed her small frame. A green knit hat sat crooked on her head, and her golden eyes, unmistakably omega, studied him with a kind of knowing that made his chest tight. She couldn't have been more than 6. What was a pup doing out here alone? Only people who feel really, really alone say that, she continued matter-of-factly. My mommy told me. She says the saddest people always pretend they're fine. Connor's throat constricted. This child saw straight through him. He should leave. Stand up, walk away. Go back to his empty penthouse where tiny omega pups couldn't crack him open with a single sentence. But he didn't move. What's your name? He heard himself ask. Leah. She smiled, proud and bright. And you're Mr. Lonely. Despite everything, Connor almost laughed. That's not my name. But that's what you are. Leah tilted her head, those golden eyes seeing too much. Your wolf is sad. I can feel him crying. The air left Connor's lungs. She shouldn't be able to sense that. She was too young, untrained. But Omega gifts didn't follow rules, especially not empathy this pure. Before Connor could respond, Leah stepped forward and took his hand. Her small fingers wrapped around his, warm despite the cold, and something in Connor's chest cracked wide open. His wolf whimpered, desperate for this comfort, this connection he'd denied himself for so long. "You need a hug," Leah announced seriously. "I don't think." She hugged him anyway. Small arms wrapped around his neck as she stood on tiptoe, and Connor froze. He didn't know what to do with his hands. Didn't know how to accept kindness he hadn't earned. But Leah just held on, her warmth seeping through his expensive suit like sunlight through ice. His wolf settled. The trembling in his hands stopped. For one impossible moment, Connor felt peace. When Leah finally stepped back, she studied him with satisfaction. *C. That helped. Connor couldn't speak. His throat was too tight, his carefully constructed walls crumbling. "You know," Leah said softly, "no one should be alone on Christmas Eve. I don't have anyone anymore." The truth tasted like ash. His pack was gone. His family, his home, everything that mattered, burned to nothing while he was away closing a deal that suddenly seemed obscenely meaningless. But Leah just smiled, bright and certain. "That's okay. My mommy's working tonight. She has 3 jobs and she's really tired, but..." She leaned in conspiratorially. "You can borrow her." Connor blinked. "What? You can borrow my mommy," Leah repeated, as if lending out parents was the most natural thing in the world. "She gives the best hugs. She makes everyone feel better. Even grumpy wolves." Something warm and painful bloomed in Connor's chest. "Why would you offer me that?" Leah shrugged, her red coat bunching adorably. Because you look like you need a mommy tonight. And my mommy says we should always help sad people." She reached up and patted his hand. Especially the lonely wolves. Connor's vision blurred. This child, this perfect, compassionate little pup, was offering him her mother like it was a gift. Like he deserved kindness instead of the isolation he'd wrapped around himself. "Where is she?" Connor managed. Cleaning offices. Leah pointed toward the street. But when she's done, we can all spend Christmas together. Before Connor could answer, Leah's cracked phone buzzed. Her smile disappeared as she answered, and Connor's alpha senses screamed danger before she even spoke. Leah. A panicked voice crackled through. "Your mama collapsed." Connor was already moving. Connor's hand shot out and took the phone from Leah's trembling fingers before she could process what was happening. His violet eyes flared with alpha command as he spoke into the device. "Where is she?" Exact location. The woman on the other end, Mrs. Chen, the building manager, stammered in shock at the authoritative male voice. "Who is this? Where's Leah?" Where? She... Connor's wolf pushed into his voice, making it resonate with supernatural weight. The kind of tone that made even other alphas straighten their spines. "The Meridian Tower. 5th floor, office suite 503. The ambulance is coming, but..." Connor was already running. He scooped Leah up with one arm, cradling her against his chest as his long legs ate up the snowy ground. The child wrapped her arms around his neck, her golden eyes wide but trusting. She didn't question, didn't protest. She just held on as this stranger became her lifeline. "Hold tight, pup," Connor growled, and then he moved. His supernatural speed kicked in, not enough to reveal what he truly was to human eyes, but enough to cover 6 blocks in under 3 minutes. Snow whipped past them. Leah's red coat flapped in the wind. Connor's designer shoes pounded pavement. His billion-dollar suit completely forgotten as his wolf surged forward with a single primal directive. "Protect." He didn't understand it. Didn't question it. A woman he'd never met was in danger, and every instinct in his body screamed that he needed to reach her now. The Meridian Tower loomed ahead, a glass and steel monument to corporate greed that Connor had probably bought and sold twice without remembering. He burst through the lobby doors, startling the night security guard. "Hey! You can't!" Connor flashed his eyes, just a hint of violet glow, and the guard's protest died in his throat. Humans couldn't fully process alpha dominance, but they felt it in their bones. The guard stepped aside. Connor took the stairs 3 at a time, Leah still clinging to his neck. His heart hammered against his ribs, and he realized with distant shock that it wasn't from exertion. It was from fear. Real, visceral fear for a woman he'd never even seen. 5th floor. Suite 503. The door hung open. And there, collapsed on the industrial carpet surrounded by cleaning supplies and half-empty coffee cups, was Tessa. Connor's world tilted on its axis. She lay crumpled in worn jeans and a faded sweatshirt, her honey-blonde hair falling across her face. Even unconscious, even surrounded by the harsh fluorescent lights and chemical smell of cleaning products, she was stunning. But it wasn't her beauty that made Connor's wolf roar to life. It was her scent, lavender and honey, fresh rain and something indefinably her. It hit him like a physical blow, flooding his senses and igniting every nerve ending in his body. His wolf clawed at his control, desperate to get closer, to touch, to claim. Mate. Mate. Mommy. Leah's cry shattered Connor's paralysis. He set Leah down gently and dropped to his knees beside Tessa. His hands hovered over her, trembling. Up close, he could see the exhaustion carved into her features. Dark circles beneath her eyes, a pallor that spoke of skipped meals and too many sleepless nights. Her pulse fluttered weakly beneath his fingers when he checked her throat. "She's breathing," Connor said, his voice rough. "Pulse is weak. She's severely dehydrated and probably hasn't eaten properly in days." Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman in a bathrobe, wrung her hands from the doorway. "She works 3 jobs. I kept telling her to slow down, but she wouldn't listen. She has to pay for Leah's medicine and the rent and—" Connor wasn't listening anymore. His wolf was howling, furious that their mate had been pushed to this point, that she'd worked herself into collapse while he sat on a bench drowning in self-pity with billions in the bank. 3 jobs, the words echoed in his head like an accusation. "Where's the ambulance?" Connor demanded. 10 minutes out, Mrs. Chen said. "Maybe 15 with the snow. Not fast enough." Connor made a decision that would change everything. He slid his arms beneath Tessa, one under her knees, one supporting her back, and lifted her as if she weighed nothing. She was too light, far too light. His wolf snarled at the evidence of her suffering. Her head lolled against his chest, and Connor's heart clenched at how right she felt in his arms. How perfectly she fit against him, like his body had been designed specifically to hold her. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Chen gasped. "Taking her to the hospital myself. It'll be faster." Connor looked down at Leah, who stared up at him with those impossibly trusting golden eyes. "Stay with Mrs. Chen." No asterisk. Leah's small voice carried absolute conviction. "I go with Mommy. Always." Connor recognized that tone. He'd used it himself 1,000 times. The unmovable will of someone who'd already lost too much. "Leah, you need to." I go with Mommy. Tears welled in her eyes, but her jaw set with stubborn determination. Please Mr. Lonely. Don't make me stay." Something in Connor's chest cracked again. He understood that fear. That desperate need to stay close to the people you loved because you'd learned too young that they could disappear forever. "All right, Pup." His voice gentled. "You can come. But you do exactly as I say. Understood?" Leah nodded frantically and grabbed onto his coat. Connor turned and carried Tessa out of that building like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because somehow, impossibly, she was. His wolf recognized what his mind was still trying to deny. This Omega woman he'd never met. This exhausted, overworked mother who'd collapsed surrounded by cleaning supplies and broken dreams. This was his fated mate. And he would burn the world down before he let anything happen to her. His Maserati was parked illegally outside. A sleek black predator worth more than most people's houses. Connor laid Tessa carefully in the back seat, adjusting her with a tenderness that would have shocked anyone who knew the ruthless CEO he pretended to be. Leah scrambled in beside her mother, taking Tessa's limp hand and pressing it to her cheek. "Is Mommy going to be okay?" The little girl's voice trembled. Connor met her eyes in the rearview mirror as he started the engine. "Yes." The word came out as an alpha vow, backed by supernatural weight. "I promise you, Leah. Your mother is going to be okay." He didn't know how he'd keep that promise. Didn't know what cosmic forces had brought him to that park bench tonight. But as he peeled out into the snowy streets, driving with controlled urgency toward St. Catherine's Hospital, Connor Logan made a decision. He'd been half dead for 3 years, haunted by loss, convinced he didn't deserve happiness or family or anything beyond the cold comfort of his bank account. But this little pup had offered to loan him her mother, had seen his broken soul and decided he was worth saving. Now it was his turn. The ruthless CEO who felt nothing. The Ice King who'd built walls no one could breach. The Alpha who'd given up on ever having a pack again. He was done hiding, done grieving, done pretending he was meant to be alone. Whatever it took, whoever stood in his way. He would protect these two. He would make sure Tessa never worked 3 jobs again. Never collapsed from exhaustion. Never struggled alone in the dark. She'd saved him tonight without even knowing it. Now he would save her right back. St. Catherine's Hospital emergency entrance erupted into controlled chaos the moment Connor's Maserati screeched to a halt under the bright lights. He was out of the car before the engine finished cooling, Tessa cradled in his arms like she was made of spun glass. Leah scrambled after him, her small hand fisting in his coat as they moved together toward the automatic doors. "I need a doctor." Connor's voice cut through the ambient noise of the ER waiting room like a blade. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. Because Connor Logan didn't ask. He commanded. A nurse at the intake desk looked up, her professional mask already in place. "Sir, you'll need to." Connor's eyes flashed violet. Not a request. Not a plea. An alpha using the full weight of his authority on a room full of humans who couldn't understand why their hindbrains suddenly screamed obey. Now, 2 orderlies appeared with a gurney. Connor laid Tessa down with a gentleness that contradicted everything about his demeanor. The expensive suit, the predatory grace, the aura of leashed violence that surrounded him like cologne. "Severe dehydration and exhaustion," Connor stated as they wheeled her toward the treatment area. His voice shifted into the clinical tone he used in boardrooms, cataloging facts like assets on a spreadsheet. "She's been working multiple jobs with inadequate rest. Hasn't eaten properly in at least 48 hours. Pulses thready. Possible hypoglycemia." A young doctor in scrubs jogged up beside the gurney, impressed despite himself. "Are you a physician?" "No. I'm the person who's going to sue this hospital into oblivion if anything happens to her." The doctor's eyes widened, but he didn't argue. Something about Connor's tone suggested this wasn't an idle threat. They burst through double doors into the ER treatment area, a maze of curtained bays and beeping machines. Connor kept pace with the gurney, Leah still clinging to his coat like a tiny shadow. "All right, we've got her from here," the doctor said, gesturing to a bay. "You'll need to wait in there." "I'm not leaving." "Sir, hospital policy." Connor pulled out his phone with one hand, never taking his eyes off Tessa as the nurses began hooking her up to monitors. 3 swipes. A number on speed dial that only 17 people in the world had access to. "Marcus. Connor Logan. I need you to find out who runs St. Catherine's Hospital." "Was. 3 minutes. Make it 2. He hung up and looked at the doctor with the expression that had made rival Sears weep. "You were saying." The doctor swallowed hard. You can stay. But then a nurse noticed Leah, half hidden behind Connor's legs, her golden eyes enormous in her pale face. Oh no, sweetie, children aren't allowed back here. The nurse's voice was kind but firm as she reached for Leah. Let's get you to the waiting room. No. Leah's scream was pure terror as she wrapped both arms around Connor's leg. I stay with mommy. I have to stay with mommy. Honey, I know you're scared, but... She stays. Connor's voice dropped into a register that made the hair on every human's neck stand up. Not loud. Not shouting. Just absolutely, irrevocably certain. The kind of certainty that rewrote reality around it. The nurse froze, her hand still extended. Sir, hospital regulations clearly state that minors without a guardian. I am her guardian. The lie came easily, naturally. Connor placed a protective hand on Leah's shoulder. And I'm telling you, she stays. That's not how this works. Connor's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then turned it toward the doctor. Do you know who this is? The doctor squinted at the photo. An older man in an expensive suit, gray hair, kind eyes. That's Dr. William Hartfield. He's the hospital director. He's also a personal friend. Another lie that would become truth in approximately 90 seconds, as soon as Marcus worked his magic. Would you like me to call him at? Connor checked his watch. 11:47 on Christmas Eve to explain why his staff is traumatizing a 6-year-old Omega child by separating her from her unconscious mother? The nurse and doctor exchanged glances. Connor could see the calculation happening. Risk breaking protocol, or risk angering someone who clearly had the power to make their lives very difficult. Leah chose that moment to let out a heartbreaking sob. Please. I need to stay with mommy. She's all I have. She's all I have. The words hit Connor like a physical blow. 'Cause he knew. He understood with every fiber of his being what it meant to lose everything and cling desperately to the one person who remained. The doctor's resolve crumbled. Fine. She can stay. But she sits in the chair and doesn't touch anything. Leah nodded frantically, swiping at her tears. Connor pulled a chair close to the bed. Close enough that Leah could see her mother, but out of the way of the medical staff now swarming around Tessa. And 4 went in. Monitors blipped to life. Numbers scrolled across screens in patterns Connor's analytical mind automatically catalogued and interpreted. Heart rate slow but steady. Blood pressure too low. Oxygen saturation. Acceptable but not good. We're giving her fluids and glucose, the doctor explained. His earlier hostility replaced by professional courtesy. Apparently Connor's threat to call the director had been convincing. Her electrolytes are severely imbalanced. When did she last eat? Leah spoke up from her chair, her voice small. Yesterday morning. She gave me her dinner. Connor's jaw clenched so hard he thought his teeth might crack. His wolf snarled with rage. Not at the child, never at the child, but at a world that let an Omega mother work herself to collapse while giving her own meals to her pup. At a system he'd thrived in, built his empire within, without ever stopping to consider the casualties. She's going to be okay, the doctor said, softer now. She needs rest and proper nutrition, but there's no permanent damage. Connor nodded once, curt. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the bay, including himself. He sat down in the chair beside Leah and took her small hand in his. Your mother is strong, he said quietly. She's going to wake up soon. Leah leaned against his arm, exhausted and terrified. Promise. Connor looked at Tessa, this woman who'd worked 3 jobs to keep her daughter safe, who'd collapsed surrounded by cleaning supplies and shattered dreams, who smelled like lavender and fate and everything he'd thought was lost to him forever. His mate. His fated mate, lying unconscious because the world had been cruel and he'd been blind. Not anymore. I promise, pup. He squeezed Leah's hand gently. And when she wakes up, things are going to be different. Different how? Connor smiled, And it was the first genuine smile he'd worn in 3 years. Dangerous. Absolutely certain. Your mother is never going to work 3 jobs again. She's never going to skip meals. She's never going to collapse from exhaustion. His violet eyes glowed in the harsh fluorescent light. Because I'm going to make sure of it. Leah studied him with those 2 wise golden eyes. Are you going to be our Christmas miracle, Mr. Lonely? Connor looked at this brave little pup who'd approached a grieving stranger in a dark park and offered him hope. Who'd trusted him with her most precious person. Who'd somehow known exactly what his broken soul needed. No, Leah. His voice was rough with emotion he'd suppressed for too long. You're my Christmas miracle. And as Tessa's heartbeat steadied on the monitor, as Leah's breathing evened out into exhausted sleep against his shoulder, Connor Logan made a vow. The Ice King was dead. The ruthless CEO who felt nothing was gone. In their place stood something far more dangerous. A fated alpha who'd finally found his pack. And heaven help anyone who tried to take them from him. Tessa woke to the sound of beeping and the sterile smell of antiseptic. Her mind clawed through layers of fog, struggling to piece together where she was and why everything hurt in that distant, cottony way that meant drugs in her system. Hospital. She was in a hospital. Panic slammed through her before coherent thought could follow. Leah. Where was Leah? She'd been cleaning the Meridian Tower, trying to finish before midnight so she could make it to her 3rd shift, and then, everything had gone dark. Tessa's eyes snapped open, and she tried to sit up despite the 4 tugging at her arm and the monitors protesting her sudden movement. Easy. The voice was deep, commanding, and completely unfamiliar. A hand, large, warm, surprisingly gentle, pressed against her shoulder, keeping her from tearing out her 4. Your daughter is safe. She's sleeping. Tessa turned her head and forgot how to breathe. A man sat in the chair beside her bed. Not just any man. The kind of man who looked like he'd been carved from marble and wrapped in a suit that cost more than her annual rent. Dark jaw. Dark hair that fell across his forehead in a way that should have been disheveled but looked intentional. And eyes. Violet eyes. They glowed faintly in the dim light of the hospital bay, betraying exactly what he was. Alpha. Not just any alpha. Tessa's omega instincts screamed recognition even as her conscious mind struggled to catch up. This was power. The kind of dominance that made every wolf in a 50-mile radius sit up and pay attention. And he was watching her with an intensity that made her feel stripped bare. Who? Her voice came out as a croak. Tessa swallowed, tried again. Who are you? Where's Leah? The alpha gestured with one hand, and Tessa's gaze followed to find her daughter curled up in another chair, wrapped in what looked like an expensive men's overcoat. Leah's chest rose and fell in the deep, peaceful rhythm of childhood sleep. Relief crashed through Tessa so hard it left her dizzy. She's okay. She's fine. Worried about you but fine. The alpha's voice softened fractionally. My name is Connor Logan. The name ricocheted through Tessa's exhausted brain. Connor Logan. Connor Logan. Where had she? No. The Connor Logan, she whispered. The CEO. She'd cleaned his offices. Well, not his specifically, but buildings his company owned. Had scrubbed toilets in towers where he probably made million-dollar decisions. And now he was sitting in her hospital bay at nearly midnight on Christmas Eve, watching her like she was something precious instead of just another struggling omega who'd pushed herself too far. Among other things. His expression was unreadable, but something flickered in those violet eyes. Something that made Tessa's skin prickle with awareness. I don't understand. Tessa forced her mind to focus despite the drugs making everything hazy. What are you doing here? How did Leah? Your daughter found me in the park. Connor leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and the movement brought him close enough that Tessa caught his scent. Pine and winter rain. Something darker beneath. Smoke and leather and raw alpha musk that made her omega biology light up like a switchboard. No, Tessa shoved down the instinctive response. She didn't have time for alpha nonsense. She had a daughter to raise, bills to pay, jobs to keep. She said I could borrow you for Christmas, Connor continued, and something about the way he said it, rough, almost vulnerable, made Tessa's heart skip. She did what? Apparently I looked lonely. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. She wasn't wrong. Tessa didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know what to do with the way this impossibly powerful alpha was looking at her, like she was a miracle instead of a mess. I collapsed, she said, changing the subject because she couldn't handle this conversation. Couldn't process why Connor Logan was here or why his presence made every nerve ending in her body sing. I was working and You were working 3 jobs on no sleep and almost no food. Connor's voice hardened. Your body gave out because you've been running on fumes for who knows how long. Shame burned through Tessa's chest. I don't need a lecture from. You need help. Connor cut her off, but there was no anger in his tone. Just certainty. And I'm going to give it to you. I don't need charity from. This isn't charity. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning Tessa couldn't quite decipher. Connor stood, and suddenly he was looming over her bed. All that alpha dominance focused on her like a laser. Do you know what happened when I caught your scent? His voice dropped lower, intimate despite the clinical setting. My wolf recognized you instantly. Tessa's breath caught. Well, he couldn't mean. Fated mate. Connor said it like a confession, like an accusation, like a promise. You're my fated mate, Tessa. The world tilted sideways. Tessa had heard stories about fated mates, the supernatural bond that tied certain wolves together across time and space. The kind of connection that was supposed to be rare, precious, undeniable. She'd never believed in it. Had written it off as romantic nonsense people told themselves to justify bad decisions. But now, looking up at Connor Logan with his impossible violet eyes and the way his scent wrapped around her like a physical touch, Tessa felt it. Pull. The recognition that went bone deep, her omega instincts screaming yes, him safe home mate. No. She shook her head, panic rising. No, that's not possible. I'm nobody. I clean offices and wait tables and I can barely keep the lights on. You're you. This doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense. Connor's hand lifted, hesitated, then gently cupped her face. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and Tessa's entire body lit up at the contact. Your daughter found me at my lowest point. Offered me something I thought I'd lost forever. Hope. Family. And then I found you, and everything clicked into place. This is crazy, Tessa whispered, but she didn't pull away from his touch. Couldn't pull away, even though every rational thought screamed that this was too much, too fast, too impossible. Maybe. Connor's smile was crooked, almost boyish despite the alpha dominance radiating from him. But I've spent 3 years being ruthlessly logical, building an empire while dying inside. And then a 6-year-old omega pup told me I could borrow her mother, and suddenly I'm alive again. His thumb traced her lower lip, and Tessa shivered. I don't believe in coincidence, Connor continued. I don't believe in accidents. Leah found me for a reason. You collapsed and I was there to catch you for a reason. His eyes flashed brighter. This bond is real, Tessa. I felt it the moment I saw you. My wolf knows. Your omega knows too. I can see it in your eyes. Tessa wanted to deny it. Wanted to protect herself and Leah from the chaos this man would bring into their carefully balanced life. But she couldn't lie. Not when her body was singing with recognition. Not when every instinct told her this alpha was hers. I'm scared, she admitted in a whisper. Good. Connor's hand slid from her face to her hand, intertwining their fingers. So am I. I haven't let anyone close in 3 years. Haven't wanted to. But your daughter offered you to me like a gift, and I'm selfish enough to accept. Leah doesn't understand. She understands more than you think. Connor glanced at the sleeping child. She recognized what I needed before I did. And she trusts me to protect what matters most to her. Why? Tessa's voice cracked. Why would you want this? Want us? You could have anyone. Connor turned back to her, and the raw emotion in his face stole her breath. Because for 3 years I've been a ghost in an expensive suit. Because your daughter looked at me and saw past the armor to the broken wolf underneath. Because you worked yourself to collapse taking care of her. And that kind of love is worth more than every dollar in my accounts. He squeezed her hand. Because you're my mate, Tessa. And I don't intend to waste a single moment of the second chance fate just gave me. Tessa felt tears slip down her cheeks. This is insane. Probably. Connor wiped her tears with his thumb. But I'm done with being alone. Done with being cold. Your daughter offered to loan you to me for Christmas. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life earning the right to keep you both. And despite every logical objection, despite the impossibility of it all, Tessa felt herself believing him. Felt the bond snap into place like a key turning in a lock. Felt, for the first time in years, like maybe everything would actually be okay. The hospital released Tessa at 6 a.m. on Christmas morning with strict orders to rest, eat properly, and follow up with her primary care physician. The doctor had been apologetic about discharging her so early, but Connor had made it clear that Tessa would receive better care under his watch than in any hospital bed. He wasn't wrong. Connor's penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the Logan Tower, a monument to wealth and isolation that had never felt like home until now. As his driver pulled up to the private entrance, Tessa stared up at the gleaming building with something close to terror. Connor, I can't. This is too much. We should just go back to my apartment. Your apartment has a broken heater and mold in the bathroom. Connor's voice was gentle but implacable as he helped her out of the car. Leah was already bouncing with excitement. Her earlier exhaustion forgotten in the magic of Christmas morning. You're not going back there. You can't just. I already did. Connor met her eyes, and there was steel beneath the tenderness. I bought the building this morning. Your landlord was very motivated to sell at 4 a.m. on Christmas. Tessa's mouth fell open. You what? Consider it condemned. The entire structure is a safety hazard. Connor lifted Leah into his arms as they entered the elevator, his thumb pressing the penthouse button. I'm having it demolished next month. You can't just buy buildings because. I can actually. I do it fairly regularly. Connor's smile was sharp. Though usually not to save my fated mate from black mold and negligent landlords. Tessa wanted to argue. Wanted to maintain some shred of independence. Some sense that she wasn't a charity case being swept up by a billionaire alpha with more money than sense. But then the elevator doors opened, and all her protests died. The penthouse was absurd. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, now blanketed in fresh snow that sparkled in the early morning light. The space was open, modern, decorated in blacks and grays that should have felt cold but somehow didn't. And in the center of the living room stood a Christmas tree. Not just any tree. A massive, perfectly shaped evergreen decorated with silver and gold ornaments, white lights twinkling like captured stars. Presents spilled out from beneath it in an avalanche of wrapped boxes and bows. You did this, Tessa whispered. When? I made some calls while you were sleeping. Connor set Leah down, and the little girl immediately ran toward the tree with a squeal of delight. I know it's excessive. It's perfect. Tessa's voice cracked. Connor, you didn't have to. Yes, I did. He turned to her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache. I haven't celebrated Christmas in 3 years. Haven't wanted to. But Leah offered me hope when I had none, and you. His hand cupped her face. You gave me a reason to stop hiding. Leah's excited chatter filled the space as she examined presents with wide golden eyes. Mommy, there's one with my name. And another one. And Mommy, there's so many. Connor had labeled every gift. Had somehow learned Leah's interests in a single night and filled boxes with dolls and books and art supplies and things Tessa could never have afforded in 100 Christmases. This is too much, Tessa said, but she was smiling through tears. This is just the beginning. Connor's thumb brushed her cheekbone. I meant what I said in the hospital. You're not borrowed anymore. You're claimed. Both of you. The word sent a shiver through Tessa's omega biology. Claimed. It should have terrified her. The possessiveness, the alpha dominance, the way Connor Logan had swept into her life and rearranged everything in the space of a single night. But instead she felt safe. Protected. Cherished in a way she'd forgotten was possible. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "I've been alone for so long. Just me and Leah against the world." "You're not alone anymore." Connor pulled her close, and Tessa let herself sink into his warmth. Let herself breathe in that scent of pine and winter that her omega recognized as home. "I know I'm moving fast. I know this is overwhelming. But I lost my pack 3 years ago, and I've been half dead ever since. I'm not wasting another moment." "What happened?" Tessa asked softly. "To your pack." Connor's arms tightened around her. "Fire. I was away on business. By the time I got back..." His voice cracked. There was nothing left to save. "My parents, my sister, her mate and their pup. All gone." Tessa's heart shattered. She pulled back just enough to look up at him, seeing the grief carved into his features. "Connor, I'm so sorry. I blamed myself. Thought if I'd been there, I could have saved them. So I buried myself in work and convinced myself I didn't deserve another chance at family." His violet eyes met hers. "And then Leah found me crying on a bench and offered to loan me her mother, and suddenly I had a reason to live again. Mommy. Mr. Connor. Come open presents." Leah bounced on her toes, holding a wrapped box covered in reindeer paper. Connor laughed, a real, genuine laugh that transformed his face, and took Tessa's hand. "Come on. Let's give your daughter the Christmas she deserves." They spent the morning in a haze of wrapping paper and hot chocolate that Connor somehow knew how to make despite probably never having entered a kitchen in his life. Leah opened presents with squeals of delight, her golden eyes shining as she discovered treasure after treasure. But the best gift came in a small velvet box that Connor pressed into Tessa's hands when Leah was distracted by a new art set. Inside was a key. "To the penthouse," Connor explained quietly. "This is your home now. Yours and Leah's. I'm having your things moved today. What's worth keeping anyway?" "Connor, I can't accept." "The bond is real, Tessa. You felt it. Felt it. Your omega recognized me the moment you woke up." His hand covered hers, warm and certain. "I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm not demanding you give up your independence. But I am asking you to let me take care of you. To let me be the alpha you deserve. The father figure Leah needs." Tessa's throat tightened. What if this is too fast? What if we're making a mistake? Then we'll figure it out together. Connor's smile was crooked. "But I don't think we are. I think your daughter saw exactly what we both needed and decided to play matchmaker. And I think fate put me on that bench on Christmas Eve for a reason." "You really believe that?" "I believe a 6-year-old omega pup told me I could borrow her mother, and 12 hours later I have everything I thought I'd lost forever." Connor pressed a kiss to Tessa's forehead. "Yeah, I believe it." Leah looked up from her art supplies, her face serious. "Does this mean Mr. Connor is staying? Not just borrowed?" Tessa met Connor's eyes, saw the hope and vulnerability there, felt the bond thrumming between them like a living thing. "Yeah, baby," she said softly. "He's staying." Leah launched herself at Connor with a squeal, wrapping her small arms around his neck. "Does that mean you're my daddy now?" Connor's breath caught. His violet eyes welled with tears he didn't bother hiding as he held the little girl close. "If that's okay with you, pup." "It's perfect." Leah kissed his cheek. "You're not Mr. Lonely anymore. You're Mr. Daddy." Connor laughed through his tears and pulled both Leah and Tessa into his arms. They sat there on the floor surrounded by wrapping paper and gifts, and the debris of the best Christmas morning any of them had ever known. The ruthless CEO who'd spent 3 years in self-imposed exile. The exhausted omega who'd worked herself to collapse. The brave little pup who'd seen a broken alpha and decided to fix him. They weren't borrowed. Weren't temporary. Weren't a Christmas miracle that would fade with the snow. They were family. And as the sun rose higher over the city, painting the penthouse in shades of gold, Connor Logan finally understood what he'd been searching for all along. Not power. Not wealth. Not revenge against a world that had taken everything from him. Just this. Two people who looked at him and saw not the Ice King, but the wolf underneath who desperately needed a pack. "Merry Christmas," he whispered against Tessa's hair. She smiled against his chest. "Merry Christmas, Alpha." And for the first time in 3 years, Connor believed in miracles again. Thank you for joining the pack today. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe and tap the moon bell so you never miss the next Alpha Destiny. And tell me in the comments, who should we follow next under the full moon?